Donald Trump has a legitimate question. The United States taxpayer gives people things all the time, hundreds of billions of dollars every month. Now, a good friend of ours says we have this used airplane that we're not going to use anymore. Got a couple more years of life in it. We're going to give it to the Defense Department. And when it's finished, you can do with it as you see fit. And it will not go to him. It goes only to the Department of Defense. And as he says, one would be a fool to say no.
So, Bob, lots of coverage here of Trump in the Middle East. What do you make of it? What do you make of what it looks like? Trump in Saudi Arabia, heading to other places. What's your initial reaction?
Well, it just shows that leadership makes a difference. When people want to do something, they can. For 3.5 years, everyone talked about Putin. 27 foreign ministries never bothered to pick up the phone and call him. Donald Trump calls him, says, let's do something about that. He and Putin and Zelensky meeting at the moment. He calls up the folks in Qatar and in Saudi Arabia, says this situation with Israel and Iran needs to be fixed. Let's do something about it. We need to have an investment. Let's have some investment. You can just see he's working on all cylinders, and it's an exciting thing to watch.
Is there a danger, though, Bob, you're drinking the Kool-Aid here? Because Putin and Zelensky haven't met yet. They may well not meet tomorrow. We're pretty far away from peace in Ukraine. We're certainly far away from peace in Israel. Trump might be good at doing arms deals with the Saudis, but that's a very, very long way from bringing about world peace, which is things he proclaimed he would do with relative ease.
Well, and that's the way to look at life, is that it is either half full or half empty. And I happen to think that having people talk to each other, there's a whole sense when you look at what's happening in investments and the capacity to have greater trade. There's so many things that are taking place I think are very beneficial.
So you think, and this is a very Trumpian idea, Bob, that affects if you make money, you don't have to make war. That's really the fundamental argument Trump seems to be making to the world.
Well, peace and prosperity are the two things that he's looking for. You know, what we've just come through is 4 years of a lack of peace and a lack of prosperity. You see people in Europe and elsewhere where the economies have been stagnant. You see the total growth of conflict, whether it be in Latin America and Central America, Formosa, Taiwan, China, the list goes on and on. The Houthis, the Hezbollah, Gaza. You see what happens when leadership disappears. And so what we're seeing is all of those things are starting to line up. There's a great agreement among allies. And this is an exciting time in my judgment.
But Bob, again, he's come in and he's imposing tariffs on the world. There's the rhetoric and the reality, and I wonder how often those twain ever actually meet when it comes to Trumpian politics. He's come in and he's basically said to a world where free trade was the centerpiece of peaceful coexistence, and he said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to impose trade barriers. And what's the net effect of that? It damages the economy rather than strengthens it.
Well, as you know, it wasn't free trade. Well, it was free trade on the American end. It was 28% on every car that came out of Europe, and everyone that came from America, but no tariff on any car from Europe. And so what he said, I think we should have them all across the board. We have it the same. And what is happening? You see it with Britain so far. You see it with China. You're going to continue to see it. There's going to be an extremely explosion in increased trade as tariff barriers are dropped. Why? Because for the first time in 40 years, we got a president that's going to say, I don't think that that's the right thing to do. So it makes perfect sense. The question is, if you're a renter, you don't notice these things. But when you're buying a house and one offers 240,000 pounds, the other one 280, then you go to 250, then you go to 2. You understand you have to negotiate. He was at zero, and they were 700% on a motorcycle into India. He says, all right, fine, and we'll do 700%. And all the bedwetters, they say, oh my goodness, look what happened. Well, I'll tell you what happened. You drop down to about 25 on both sides, and that's much better. There's going to be much more trade, and it's much fairer to the United States and beneficial to the world, in my judgment.
Do you think the anti-Trump lot are bedwetters?
Oh, if only 10% of their collapses took place, the world would be in a disaster. No, they're really frustrated when peace and prosperity breaks out. And look at Iran. Iran under Biden. Iran would not talk to the United States. Now listen to this. This is too bizarre for words. The interlocutor with Iran on behalf of the United States was Russia. Vladimir Putin appointed the negotiators on behalf of the United States. No time since '79 has Iran talked directly with the United States. It's doing it now because it understands exactly what the conditions, the circumstances. Anybody that can't see it is, in my opinion, a bedwetter.
You've been around a long time, Bob, in the political world. What do you make of the accusations of corruption against Trump? So he's accepted this jet from the Qataris, which will become Air Force One, and then it will stop being Air Force One and go to the Trump presidential estate effectively. He'll be able to use it after he's no longer president. That's a $400 million gift in plain sight to a president from a foreign state. Are you happy? Are you comfortable with that?
I question whether or not it's ever going to happen. It's a used airplane. It's going to be used for a couple of years. It's given to the United States government. What they've done in the past is they've built a building or they've laid down additional runways. They've made contributions to the fact that the American taxpayer, and let me just pause and emphasize that again, the American taxpayer maintains the trade routes across the world, particularly in the Persian Gulf and in the Red Sea. And as a result, some of the United Emirates and some of the friends in the neighborhood, they make contributions to that effort, very, very minimal, but nevertheless, they do, as I say, they'll put in a hangar or they'll put in a runway or something. In this case, they said, we have this used airplane, this old airplane has a couple more years of life in it. You can have it. I question whether or not the United States will accept it, but I do not. I think Donald Trump has a legitimate question. The United States taxpayer gives people things all the time, hundreds of billions of dollars every month. Now, a good friend of ours says we have this used airplane that we're not going to use anymore, got a couple more years of life in it. We're going to give it to the Defense Department, and when it's finished, you can do with it as you see fit, and it will not go to him. It goes only to the Department of Defense, and as he says, one would be a fool to say no.
I just want to, Bob, put your hand on your heart for a second. Joe, imagine 4 years ago, Joe Biden, your mate Joe Biden, accepts a plane from the Qataris. Can you honestly, well, say he did, and you'd be shouting from the rooftops, you'd be clamoring Democrat corruption to the heavens, wouldn't you?
If they gave it to the Defense Department, it would say, fine, that lousy Democrat government that refuses to replace our equipment, 1 plane in 3 can't fly, and all the damage, he spends all of his time on transgenders in the military. Finally, somebody's giving him an airplane that actually works. Of course, he'd have to put a ramp on it and a wheelchair lift and a few other things in order to get into it. But that would be beneficial. It'd be foolish to say no to something that's free. But in this case, don't hold your breath that it's actually going to take place. But the United States, if it were reversed, it is indeed. Americans give things away all the time. For Americans to accept something once, I think is not all that bad.
Just finally, Bob, everything in the garden rosy then, as far as you're concerned. First 4 months of Trump, you think he's knocking it out of the ballpark?
Let me say, fortunately, I've been able to live through this twice. I lived through one of the worst presidents in the world history, and that was Jimmy Carter. And of course, we saw in Iran, we saw what happened in the Panama Canal, we saw across the board. It was replaced by Ronald Reagan. And I remember being in Congress during Ronald Reagan's first couple of years, all of the folks that were all so upset, going to blow up the world and all that sort of thing. It was an exciting time. And this is as close a duplicate to it as I think you'll ever see in history. 3 years from now, we're going to have a little chat and look back and say, how in the world could people not see the greatness that's going to take place over these next 36 months?
I'm going to hold you to that. In 3 years' time, let's have a date and we'll talk on how it's gone.
Sign me up.
You're a good man. Thanks for talking to us.
All the best. Bye-bye.